I am Dr. Bliss, and this is the fourth video in a series of videos regarding funding for special ed needs. And we're dealing at this point with private schools and the ability of private schools to receive funding. We've already discussed under ESA. And then the next step is, as a voucher recipient, going to a private school. So in the state of North Carolina, you cannot be a voucher recipient unless your student is attending a private school. So in attending the Scholar system in our schools in North Carolina, this video is to inform you how that process works. We've already discussed the dates and the process for application into the scholarship system. But what I want to do is now, let's say you receive the scholarship, which you should be able to do. The funding is probably going to match the need this year. We'll see, but I doubt there are going to be any rejections for the ESA account. I could be wrong, but we'll see. The funding cycle is different than it has been in the years past. The years past has been somewhat restricted to a waiting list of applicants that are trying to get on to the ESA Plus account. Now, one of the advantages is once you're in the ESA Plus account, you stay in that. You don't have to reapply in the lottery. You have to reapply each year, but you're given that position. So if we're looking at $9,000 and we're looking at starting at, let's say, first grade, one of my clients is in that process right now. We're looking at 10 or 11 years. That's $100,000. I hope you just heard what I said. That's $100,000 or more, because you can continue into the 22nd year. So in theory, you can start at age 5 when you have moderate special ed needs that are not going to dissipate over a period of time. Moderate special ed needs. You start at the age of 5 into kindergarten, and you would receive this funding for 5 to 22 years of age. That's basically 16, 17, 18 years of funding. If we say 15 years of funding, you know, that is $135,000. So let's understand this is important financial management issues, but how does it work? So once you get the ESA funding, right, you're still subject in part to the IEP, IEE. What do I mean by that? Well, it's a blank check that's given to you to provide a set of services that are available. When I say you're subject to the IEP, IEE, you're going to want to direct how you utilize these funds in a way that is consistent with what's in best interest for the student. You don't want to go pay for an occupational therapist when you don't need an occupational therapist, right? You don't want to be paying for things you don't need. You could probably always use more tutoring though, right? So the way we do it is the Child Find has produced this IEP, IEE, and it lists a number of services that are to be provided, okay? And that's given as a lump sum. What you have given up is the equivalent services and FAPA, right? When you take this process, you've given these things up, and now you're independently, as the parent holding the wallet, now you have this ESA wallet. Now, in spending money out of this wallet, you can only spend it with approved providers. And these approved providers are basically people like behavioral analysis, ABA, speech language pathologists, SLPs, occupational therapy, physical therapists, language specialists, and in my case, you know, special education coordinator specialist. So we come in and coordinate the special education package under the tuition structure of the school providing this track for the student. So we produce a track for $8,500 that coordinates all these services based upon the IEP and the IEE. But we always, let me state that again, we always maximize the purse by providing additional tutoring. So whether that's tutoring into the summer, whether it's tutoring during the school day, whatever it is, we provide that maximum volume, because each year you have to return whatever unused funds you have if you're in the moderate level funding base, the $9,000 funding base. If you're in the higher funding base, $17,000 funding base for severe needs, then there's a rollover provision. But our school doesn't provide that. We just deal with moderate educational needs. So in that process, we open up this wallet, this ESA wallet, and we manage that for you. There's $500 that's off to the side to do whatever, and that's up to you, but it has to go through this service provider list. And then we design that program and coordinate the transportation, all the other things, to implement the IEP dynamic. But we're adding a little bit of an additional, let's say, sweetener to the process, because we're using a PEP, which really allows us to integrate a holistic approach to where the child wants to be. In most cases, if you have moderate special ed needs, you will be independent at some point in your life. And so we're trajecting that independence, and it's a process. So I come in as a coordinator of these services, working with the family to produce the end result of an independent, healthy child that has a special ed need, right? But it's a moderate need. So I hope this has clarified the matter. For us, the cutoff date is June 15th. If you want us to develop a program for your child, you have to apply. As I said, you got to start back in November 6th of the year before you want to enroll your student. You got to get the application in. You got to start the process no later than the first week of November. You get and that's pushing it, right? You should be starting it back in August or June. And you contact a local LEA, say, hey, I want a special education assessment for my child. I want an IEP assessment under child find. I want this assessment. You got to have that application in no later than the first week of November. Then you place the application in February. You get a response back in April. And by no later than June 15th, you have your response in April. June 15th, you have to come to us and say, hey, we want to work with you guys and use this $9,000 to effectuate the criteria on the IEP and the IE in our school dynamic system, right? But we're going to use every penny of that money that we can, and any excess will be used to provide tutoring. So you might have $1,000 for speech therapy, $1,000 for occupational therapy, $1,000 for a behavioral analysis. That's an analyst. Now that's $3,000. The other $6,000 we will earmark for tutoring or technology equipment or whatever. But we will do that separately. We're not under, at that point, we're not under the IEP, IEE criteria. However, every 3 years, this document needs to be updated. And that's the final leg of this process. Now that document can be updated by going back to the school district and saying, hey, we want to get an updated IEP every 3 years. Or you can go to a licensed psychiatrist, child psychiatrist in the state of North Carolina, licensed psychiatrist, not psychologist, psychiatrist. And they can give you a certification that that need is still present. And then this process continues. And you don't have to go through an IEP process, just a determination letter that this need is still present. Okay? I think that wraps up what happens with the state. I think that wraps up what happens with the wallet. I thank you for your time. Here's the issue, the heart of the matter, that I think if you've gone through these 4 videos, you need to understand this. If you want to raise your child in the name of Jesus Christ, and you're committed to that process, the public school system has an excellent, world-class, I think the best in the world, special education universe that can help your child. The problem with it is not Christ-centric. As a matter of fact, in many cases, there's actually an antichrist element that's involved with that. Teaching children gender fluidity, teaching children to tolerate a level of violence that is infiltrated in the environment because of the peers. And particularly if you have special ed needs, the risk factor of being bullied and being shamed is so high that I can't imagine a parent wanting to put their child who has special ed needs into that system. I've been in that system. I've seen what it does to children. The system is not, even though it's designed to help them to get into what they call a mainstream situation, the discipline is not there within the classroom environment to enforce a loving, caring environment. The possibility of the kid being ostracized, bullied, and shamed is far too high for me to ever recommend that, with the exception of severe special education needs, because it's almost impossible to provide that elsewhere. So with that being said, let me just go over some numbers with you and let you understand the magnitude of the problem that we're having here. There are estimated to be between 100 and 110 homeschool families, for example, in the state of North Carolina. Of those 110 homeschool families, 110,000, let's say there's about 150 students. By national statistics, those 150,000 students, 10 to 12% of them have moderate special ed needs or severe special ed needs, but they have special ed needs. So if we say, let's say a light figure of 9%, excuse me. If 9% of the homeschool population has special ed needs that are moderate in their construction, right? That's over 10,000 students. Right? Over 10,000 students. These 10,000 students, by definition, fall through the cracks. They don't get any resourcing from the state unless they've gone through this process that I've just talked about. And listen, I have a PhD in education, a master's degree in educational tech, and I'm telling you, and a master's degree in secondary education for special ed needs. I'm telling you, this is a very complicated process, and that's why we come in from the beginning and offer to do the entire program with you, starting from the beginning of petitioning for the IEP and coming in as an educational consultant to do an independent evaluation to be able to maximize the child's resourcing, and then to help you go into the voucher process so that we can get this wallet so we can get on with business. There's a huge need here, right? There's a huge need here. And these are people, this is when Jesus says, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. And what is good religion in the epistles? Good religion is to take care of the widows and orphans. These are orphans. These are people, kids that need help. And we can help them by going through this process. We can help their mothers and their care providers. We can really accomplish a great mission here, staying on key and staying on focus. If we take this number on a national level, it is actually staggering. The number of people that have special ed needs that are not getting resourced is staggering in the private school sector or in the homeschool sector. But just to be clear, in the state of North Carolina, there's not an ability to get access to this resourcing, either through the ESA, equivalent provision, or through the voucher, unless you're in a private school. And we offer that to you. Look forward to your application. Remember, June 15th is the cutoff date. You have to start back in November to get your kid in. And we're here to help from beginning to end. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.